Of the elven gods, few have had a greater impact on the Warhammer world than Khaine, the bloody-handed god of murder. His fingerprints can be found all over the history of the elves, and, by extension, any race they have come into contact with. It was his sword that cursed Anarion the Defender, opening the heart of Ulthuan's greatest hero to the likes of the hag sorceress, Morathi. This, in turn, planted the seeds for the birth of Malekith and the eventual origin of the Dark Elf race. Every atrocity committed by a Dark Elf, from a simple beating to the War of Vengeance itself, can be traced back to the bloody-handed god. His touch is a poison coursing within the old world's veins, every bit as deadly as the taint of chaos or the curse of undeath. The Sword of Khaine is not the only magical artifact to carry his murderous touch into the wider world. When Dark Elves began worshipping at Khaine's altar, he supposedly saw fit to grant them gifts as a sign of his favor. It was Morathi who gave the cult of Khaine and its witch elf followers the first Cauldrons of Blood. The hag sorceress claims that the god of murder himself gave the cauldrons to the cult as a reward for their loyal service. Considering her deceitful nature, however, it's possible that she crafted them herself. This would further bind the witch elves to her service, as only Morathi knows all the incantations needed to unleash the full potential of these potent artifacts. Whatever the truth of their origin, Cauldrons of Blood are heavily enchanted weapons of war within the Dark Elf arsenal. They are often stored in temples of Khaine, but when a great host of witch elves assembles, they will inevitably bring a cauldron with them into battle. Forged from black, magic-resistant iron, each cauldron is overlooked by an immense statue of Khaine. His right hand grasps a sword, while the left holds a heart that constantly drips blood upon his eager followers. Two sets of stairs wind up to the elevated platform holding the cauldron, letting witch elves approach it with new victims. There the wretches are sacrificed to the Lord of Murder, and their lifeblood emptied into the Cauldron of Blood. Curiously, no matter how much blood is poured into the cauldron, it never overflows. It's as if the metal itself greedily sups upon the fluid, ever thirsting for new sacrifices in Khaine's name. The powers of a Cauldron of Blood can only be properly harnessed by Morathi, or a death hag, in profane rituals dedicated to the bloody-handed god. The most famous, though arguably least useful in a battle, is its ability to reverse the flow of time on an elf's body. By bathing in the bloody mess, an elderly dark elf can find their frames restored to their youthful state. This change is not permanent, however, and the elf will age back to their true, withered form if they do not frequently bathe in the cauldrons. To make matters worse, each bath requires more victims to work, and its effects last less and less time. Crone Halibron, the oldest witch elf to walk the lands, requires an unseemly number of sacrifices to rejuvenate her crooked form each year. Only Morathi has perfected the rituals required to make the bloodbath's effects permanent, and she is in no mood to share such knowledge with her lackeys. This keeps the cult of Khaine loyal to her, as she has bound them with the irresistible lure of eternal life and, more importantly, eternal beauty. Witch elves are not the only dark elves to bathe within the Cauldrons of Blood. The final rite of passage for novice Khainite assassins is to submerge themselves within the boiling vat of bodily fluids. Those strong enough to survive the experience become full-fledged assassins, while those who perish are quickly forgotten. Unlike the witch elves, this experience does not de-age or empower the assassins. Rather than drawing from the power of sacrifice, they are a sacrifice. Even the assassins that survive are known as the Shiar Nuan, or Blessed Dead. This symbolic death in the Cauldrons of Blood lets a Khainite assassin live only to serve their murderous god, for a dead man fears nothing in this life or the next. In war, a Cauldron of Blood is an incredibly potent weapon. It acts as a chariot, with two witch elves and a death hag riding atop it and intoning the rituals required to power the cauldron. It requires no mounts to carry it across the battlefield, as the will of Khaine himself drives the cauldrons forward. Its enchanted form can plow through ranks of enemy soldiers with devastating effect, crushing bloody body parts beneath the tread of its iron-shod wheels. This is the least impressive of a cauldron's potential uses in war, however. When full of sacrificial blood and the proper rituals enacted, it can empower Dark Elves in their eternal quest for bloodshed and conquest. At the behest of a death hag, a crimson shield, known as a blood shield for hopefully obvious reasons, will rise up and ward the cauldron and those around it from harm. Witch elves and death hags benefit the most from this protection, but any dark elf near a cauldron of blood will find enemy arrows deflected and blades turned aside. The cauldron can also bestow the strength of Khaine to nearby allies, empowering their limbs and making their blows more deadly. If the winds of magic are exceptionally volatile, the blood can be commanded to bubble and boil before inspiring the fury of Khaine in the hearts of his followers. When this occurs, those around the cauldron attack with reckless abandon, disregarding any threats to their own safety in a desperate attempt to slay their enemies. Only the foolish, desperate, or suicidal would dare confront a Dark Elf army empowered by such a lethal artifact. In Total War Warhammer, Cauldrons of Blood are a mount option for Death Hags and Crone Hellebron. Hellebron's Cauldron is a little more expensive than the Death Hags, costing 800 gold in multiplayer compared to the 750 needed to take the latter's Cauldron. Functionally, however, they do the same thing. The Riders' pitiful armor values increase to a respectable 80, giving the Hags some much needed protection from small arms fire, as well as improving their speed by a fair amount. Their mass more than triples, letting Death Hags and Hellebron cruise through blocks of infantry with little issue. It also nearly doubled their hit points, making them much harder to kill with a concentrated gooning effort. Unfortunately, nearly every other statistic a Hag has drops when they're mounted on a Cauldron of Blood. Melee attack, melee defense, and weapon strength all plummet into the toilet, and their 20% physical resistance values disappear as well. So how does a Cauldron justify these massive stat decreases? By providing a few area of effect buffs, of course. Taking a Cauldron gives Hellebron or the Death Hag the Fury of Khaine, Blood Shield of Khaine, and Terror special abilities. It also gives them a hefty magic resistance value, though that's lost a lot of value since it stopped applying to magic attacks. Of its other abilities, the Fury of Khaine is particularly nice, as it gives an active effect that boosts melee attack, charge bonus, and weapon strength in a decent sized radius. This effectively compensates for stat drops the Cauldron gives, while also buffing nearby units. The Blood Shield ability is a little underwhelming, at least in comparison to its lore, as it only gives a 5% physical resistance bonus, but every little bit can help. With that, we've concluded our overview of the Cauldrons of Blood, Khaine's favorite crockpots. Hopefully this video and the ones prior to it have satisfied the Druchii fans on the channel for the time being, as we'll be moving on to other factions in the upcoming weeks. If you liked learning about these murderous weapons, feel free to subscribe to get easier access to my videos going forward. You could also like the video and leave a comment down below if you feel so inclined, as I'm always happy to take requests from the community. Finally, we have a Discord where you can link up with the people who watch these videos. I also take care to post my videos there, and it seems to be a bit more reliable than YouTube when it comes to telling people a new video is out. If you want to know a video is out the second it's released, that's probably your best bet. Until next time, this has been Sigmar's Chosen, signing off for now.